Presidents, men and women. President Trump will convene the second cabinet meeting of his second term tomorrow. Billionaire Elon Musk took center stage at the first meeting, but the White House hasn't said whether he will be there on Monday, as Republican lawmakers urge the White House to muzzle Musk on hot-button issues like Social Security. Trump's other cabinet secretaries have a lot on their plate. Attorney General Pam Bondi's DOJ is dealing with judicial pushback on the administration's mass deportations and cuts to federal workforce. Border Czar Tom Homan is under fire for the administration's targeting of the student visa and green card holders. Critics say raids and interrogation are being carried out without regards for due process. And Trump's Transportation Secretary, Sean Duffy, is raising eyebrows after he invoked a familiar and profane insult to talk about New York City's subways. We'll have the latest on all of it tonight, plus more signs across the country that voters are fed up and ready to fight back. From noisy town halls to massive rallies, I've got some thoughts in tonight's Rise Up on where this all could be headed. Joining me now is Congresswoman Becca Balint, Democrat of Vermont. Congresswoman, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Reverend.
You sit on the Judicial Committee. Let's start there. President Trump was posting on social media again last night, and Judge Boasberg, who is handling the case involving deportations of alleged Venezuelan gang members, some of your Republican candidates have called for his impeachment. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer on Meet the Press this morning had this to say about Trump's battle with the courts.
He thinks he should be king. He thinks he should do whatever he wants, regardless of the law. And he thinks judges should just listen to him. We actually have had over 100 cases in the courts where we've had a very good record of success. So Donald Trump, infuriated by that success, said judges should be impeached. Let me tell Donald Trump and the American people, Democrats in the Senate will not impeach judges, full stop.
Do you agree, Congresswoman?
Oh, absolutely. Here's the thing. We have a president who we know is obsessed with grievances and slights. He has an enemies list. He is using his office as if he has dictatorial powers. And he has turned the DOJ into an arm, an agent for him and his pursuit of more power. It is not about the law. It's not about the evidence. It's not about the facts or the Constitution. It is about pursuing his perceived enemies. And I got to tell you, all of this is because he is failing right now. He is failing in the presidency, and you talked about it yourself. The last cabinet meeting was a disaster. He knows it. People are angry, and they are calling on their members of Congress, whether you're Republican or Democrat, to stand up for Social Security, to stand up for Medicaid. And they know that he is working in service of the billionaire class. That's what his presidency has been so far. And so it has been governing by gimmicks from day one.
All right, now governing by gimmicks, let's go to this. President Trump will hold his second cabinet meeting tomorrow, as I said. And while we don't know yet whether Elon Musk will be there, but NBC News is reporting Republicans behind the scenes are urging the White House to dial back Musk's interview, especially his comments on Social Security, which Musk has called a Ponzi scheme. What have you been hearing from your constituents about Musk and about this administration's efforts to cut Social Security services, such as assistance over the phone?
They're absolutely enraged. And I think that this administration is grossly underestimating the fury of people across this country who depend on Social Security and Medicaid to just get by. And of course, you had Howard Lutnick, the Commerce Secretary, sort of giving up the game the other day when he said, oh, well, my mother wouldn't even notice if her Social Security check didn't come through. Give me a break. What planet are you on? We have millions of Americans right now who are depending on us to stand up for these programs that they have paid into, that they have earned. And Elon Musk calling it a Ponzi scheme, again, it is an indication of where Republicans want to go. They always want to touch Social Security. They just lie about it.
I got a lot of feedback on what the Commerce Secretary said, who is a billionaire, and he's talking about his 94-year-old mother-in-law. He's a billionaire. Of course she wouldn't worry.
That's right.
But your fellow Vermont colleague, Senator Bernie Sanders, has been holding a series of rallies with Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez that has drawn significant crowds. Yesterday's event in Tucson, Arizona, drew 20,000 people, according to local media reports. A rally in Denver on Friday drew 34,000, according to Senator Sanders. It was the largest crowd he'd ever addressed. What do you make of the passion we're starting to see out there at rallies and town halls?
People understand that this administration is not actually interested in assisting them in making ends meet. And this is a moment where we all have to come together as working people across this country in coalition. And I'm so excited that Bernie and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez are doing this. And I also want to let folks know town halls are happening in every single congressional district where Democrats are showing up. And we are also talking directly to people about the concerns that they have with Elon Musk, with his failing administration. And so what they're seeing in these massive crowds, we're also seeing in our tiny town halls, in towns at the end of dirt roads, you know, in all of our rural districts. So it is what Americans are feeling right now. And as I said, this president has underestimated the fury that Americans feel right now that he is not addressing their concerns.
You're a former middle school teacher, so I have to get your take on the executive order Trump signed on Friday aimed at gutting the Department of Education. The administration claims that cuts won't impact programs that high school and low-income and rural areas are located. But you know how the education system works firsthand. What do you believe will be the impact of these policies?
Oh, of course children are going to suffer. Of course families are going to suffer. No question. Because we have a system through the Department of Education that supports those students that most need the help. And so for him to say it's not going to impact the services, it's not going to impact what's happening on the ground, you know, you can't believe anything this man says. We know that. We know that you can't believe anything he says. He is not looking out for regular people. He's not looking out for those students and those families that I had in those 4 rural public schools in Vermont that I taught at over the course of my career. And so those of us in Congress who have been in a classroom, and there are several of us, we know that he does not understand what he's talking about, and he has put somebody in position to head that department who is trying to gut public school education. That is the plan.
Now, finally, President Trump has constantly attacked the notion of gender identity. He's attempting to ban transgender service members from our military. References to transgender and queer identity have been exercised from government materials as part of his DEI purge. And we've heard several LGBTQ Americans express fears that marriage equality will be rescinded on his watch and by the Supreme Court. As an openly gay member of Congress, the first representing Vermont, do you feel like LGBTQ people are safe under this administration?
All I can tell you is we are not going to let him strip us of our rights. We are not going back to a time when our partnerships were not acknowledged by our state and federal government. We're not doing that. And so those of us who represent the LGBTQ community in Congress are standing shoulder to shoulder with our colleagues in the Democratic caucus, 214 strong at my count right now. And we are saying absolutely not to this hatred and this bigotry, and no pen that he uses is going to erase our community. Not on my watch.
Congresswoman Becca Ballant, thank you for being with us tonight. Moving on to our political panel now as we gear up for another busy week in Washington. Jennifer Horn, Republican analyst and co-founder of the Lincoln Project, and Pat Dennis, Democratic strategist and president of American Bridge 21st Century. Jennifer, I want to start with some exclusive NBC News reporting. Multiple people close to the Trump administration say they're concerned about Elon Musk's public comments on Social Security, which he has described as the biggest Ponzi scheme of all time, and that's in quotes. They are urging the White House to either keep Musk from doing so many interviews or at least be more scripted when he talks about entitlement programs, which Trump so far has promised not to touch. Trump has gone to great lengths to defend Musk, even holding a Tesla event on the White House lawn. What do you think it would take for Trump to turn on him?
I think there's nothing that can happen that will cause Trump to turn on Elon Musk or to try to even rein him in any meaningful manner. We have to remember what the connection between Elon Musk and Donald Trump is. It is Musk's money that got Donald Trump reelected. It was Musk's money that came to the rescue in the general election when the Trump campaign wasn't getting the job done, especially in the swing states. So that it's never going to happen. The concern here is much bigger than just this one issue. You know, we are living in a world right now, the United States of America, that's supposed to be a democracy, and elected representatives are supposed to be speaking for the people. And it is one multi-billionaire individual who is pulling all of the strings. Donald Trump isn't in charge of anything anymore. Musk is going to get what Musk wants. And when it comes to this particular issue, people have to understand what we're talking about when Elon Musk, who again has all the influence here, says that Social Security should be the number one issue, the number one program eliminated. That is the word he used, eliminated. He's not talking about trying to weed out fraud or redundancies. He's not talking about efficiency. He said elimination. And there are millions of Americans who will feel the loss of their Social Security check the first week it doesn't show up.
Pat, we've been following the big turnout for Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders and Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez are getting on their Fight the Oligarchy tour. 34,000 people came to see them in Denver and on Friday, and another 20,000 in Tucson, Arizona yesterday. What lessons should Democrats be taking from these rallies? And do you see this as excitement for their particular brand of progressivism, or is it their willingness to stand and fight right now that's getting them attention?
Well, that's the lesson, right? The lesson is we got to fight. Now's the time to fight, and people want to see a fight. I think this is something that everybody across the Democratic Party is understanding. And just to jump back to Social Security real quick, it's one of the important reasons there is a fight here. The part of that quote that nobody's talking about isn't that they're saying, oh, you need to say less about it. It's the fact that they're not saying you need to stop trying to cut Social Security, because the guy's out there closing offices, the guy's trying to shut down the phone lines at Social Security, and they're saying, oh, stop talking about it. They're not saying, oh, stop doing it. So that's the fight. We got to be in every congressional district. We got to be driving this message home because people are fired up. I'm fired up.
Jennifer, Trump will host his second cabinet meeting tomorrow. It feels like a lifetime since the first one. Since then, we've seen stock market turbulence over his trade wars, court challenges to his Doge cuts, and uproar over his mass deportation efforts. How much pressure is this administration under to show Americans that things are under control? And are they capable of delivering that message? Or will his meeting just be yet another opportunity for Trump's deputies to kiss the ring?
Well, I think we all know the answer to that question. We all know that all of his deputies understand. They understand the game. They understand what they have to say and do and how they have to behave whenever in the room with Trump or whenever they are in front of cameras with Trump. I don't think that we should anticipate that there's going to be anything different tomorrow out of all of this. I do think that, you make a reference to, can they deliver the message that everything is under control? I think one of the big problems here isn't just that Trump is underestimating the growing anger of the American people, but I think there is a growing sense of fear and unsteadiness, that the people are waking up every day genuinely in fear of what's next, what is happening. Their neighbors are being pulled out of their communities to be deported in this mass deportation. The female governor of New York is being attacked by the president's Department of Transportation, Secretary of Department of Transportation. The people of New York City, our largest city, are about to feel an assault from the Department of Transportation. I mean, these are issues, and Social Security, again, we can't mention that often enough. The people are feeling the pain and the fear of what is coming out of this administration every day. And the Bernie Sanders rallies, these are only the beginning. This is only the beginning, and I think it's going to get much worse in the weeks ahead.
Pat, Trump's Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy was in New Jersey yesterday, and he had some colorful things to say about the New York City subway and Governor Kathy Hochul. Take a listen.
If you want people to take the train, take transit, then make it safe, make it clean, make it beautiful, make it wonderful. Don't make it a hole, which is what she's done. And she can fix it in hours. Not days, not weeks, not months, but hours she could fix it, and she chooses not to.
Now we've heard President Trump use that kind of language to describe other countries, like Haiti. But now his administration seems emboldened to invoke that term when describing places in this country, Trump's own hometown. No less, he's doing that and using that language. Pat, to hear I'd love to hear your reaction to that comment and the underlying message that he's delivering.
First of all, when do you think the last time Sean Duffy rode the subway was? This guy's a TV star who's out there firing air traffic controllers or having plane crashes all around the country, completely unqualified for his job, and he's just out there doing a political show. What is the story of this administration right now? Trump ran a campaign and came into office saying he was going to focus on the economy and getting prices down. And him and his administration have done nothing about that. All of their policies, if anything, are crashing the economy while driving prices up. And these folks are trying to do a little show so that people will be distracted from what's going on. And meanwhile, they're out there trying to cut Social Security. The economy's going down, and they're eliminating education funding for kids with special needs. So it's just a distraction.
Your reaction, I have to ask you, of this kind of language used by Duffy. Jennifer.
I feel exactly the same way. This is Donald Trump has emboldened not just he emboldened his supporters, his MAGA base, but also people who are holding the highest, previously most respected positions in the country to behave in this really despicable manner. In this particular case, I find it fascinating that Sean Duffy isn't just talking about the subways. He's talking about, again, the female governor of the state of New York. By the way, my home state. And his willingness to attack her using that language, blaming her. By the way, it's her fault. You'll notice in the way that he spoke, and that she could fix this in a couple of hours, but she chooses not to. That statement alone is such a revelation of ignorance on the part of Sean Duffy that it's really, I don't even know how to respond to it. It's beyond the pale. The language is unacceptable, and the continued targeting of women who dare to stand up and speak back to Donald Trump is also unacceptable.
All right, Jennifer Horn and Pat Dennis, thank you both. More Politics Nation. Let's turn back to the issue of Trump's battle with the legal system and whether we could be heading for a constitutional crisis. Joining me now is Melissa Murray, legal analyst for MSNBC. Melissa, the Trump administration will have an appeals court hearing tomorrow as they fight Judge Boasberg's temporary injunction against their use of the Alien Enemies Act to deport alleged Venezuelan migrants. Last night, Trump was posting a picture of the judge with former Second Gentleman Doug Emhoff as supposed evidence of his political bias. This case has become a major flashpoint between Trump and the courts. Where do you see it headed, Melissa?
Well, thanks for having me, Rev. Obviously, this could very well end up before the United States Supreme Court. Again, the question here is ultimately if a resolution to this case is issued by that court, or indeed any court, whether President Trump will abide by that. But as you mentioned, these photographs, the calls for the impeachment of Judge Boasberg, all of these things, I think, are intended to do one of three things. So one, at the very least, maybe this results in impeachment. I think that's highly unlikely, as we've seen before in the various impeachments of President Trump himself. Impeachment is something of a paper tiger. It's very unlikely that anyone is going to muster the necessary supermajorities to impeach this judge. That means there are two or three other things that could be going on here. One is that this is about cultivating an environment where individuals, whether it's Mr. Trump's followers or just people in the public, are incentivized to do violence to these judges or simply to harass these judges. And we've seen Esther Salas on this network speaking out against those kinds of actions, which are becoming increasingly likely given the tenor of our times. And then finally, the thing I think is most dangerous here is that these kinds of calls for the impeachment of judges with whom the president does not agree simply encourages individuals in the public to disregard the work that judges do, to dismiss judges' pronouncements as illegitimate or somehow wrong when they are issued if they don't necessarily line up with this president's agenda. And I think that's a really dangerous place for the judiciary to be. And that really does signal a budding, if not full-blown, constitutional crisis.
Now, Trump and his allies on Capitol Hill have been calling for Judge Boasberg to be impeached, drawing a rare rebuke from Supreme Court Justice John Roberts. How unusual are these calls to impeach judges, and how did you interpret what Justice Roberts had to say?
So, as I said, I think it's very unusual to call for the impeachment of a judge simply because you don't agree with his rulings or her rulings. And I think the Chief Justice was right to speak out about this. But I cannot say enough that we shouldn't necessarily be praising the Chief Justice for making this intervention. The Chief Justice himself is the author of United States versus Trump, the decision from last summer that essentially blessed this muscular approach to Article 2, a muscular presidential power that this president has now taken to the hilt. So it's great that the Chief Justice intervened and that he said that this was an inappropriate action for the president to take. But he's part of the problem. It's almost like Victor Frankenstein getting mad because the monster he created has gone too far.
Now, the Trump administration is continuing to target student visa and green card holders. We've also heard about Columbia University graduate student Mahmoud Khalil, who was arrested and detained because of his pro-Palestinian activism, is scheduled to return to court next month. On Friday, the DOJ asked a student activist at Cornell to surrender to ICE. He is a U.S. visa holder and is suing the Trump administration after helping lead campus pro-Palestine protests last year. We've also heard reports of green card holders being held for questioning at airports and having their phones searched. Are the courts moving fast enough to keep up with these cases?
So as a matter of constitutional design, Rev, the courts are not meant to move quickly. They can intervene on an emergency basis, but they're meant to be deliberative. The idea here is that individuals may be called out by the government, but they should have an opportunity to present their own cases before the judge. That's the due process that we're all entitled to, even individuals with whom this administration doesn't agree. So we are getting all of these cases. The problem is the administration is doing so much and so quickly that it's really going to be difficult for courts to capture all of this and to process it in a way that is fast enough to accommodate what's going on. And again, we still have the issue that no matter what judges say, and here we have in the case of the Alien Enemies Act, Judge Boasberg saying, turn the planes around, come back to the United States, let these individuals have a hearing. And we have this administration saying, too bad, we've done it already. And so that's a big issue here as well.
Now, before I let you go, in the past week, the Trump administration has announced it will cut civil rights divisions at the Department of Homeland Security and Education. The Justice Department's Civil Rights Division has been repurposed to focus on immigration and target diversity programs. Many of us who fought so hard to get civil rights protections written into law are just outraged to see them tossed aside and turned on their heads. What will be the long-term impact of this, in your opinion? Can we ever get back what's being lost here?
Well, to be very clear, those civil rights protections that are enshrined in statutes, those have not been repealed. But the real problem here is that without the enforcement mechanisms that exist in these federal agencies, you're going to have to rely on individual plaintiffs to bring these cases. That requires money. That requires time. That requires a lot of things that ordinary litigants who are facing civil rights injuries just don't have. And so I think what we are going to see is a diminution in the cases against the government or against other parties for violating civil rights because we just don't have the government enforcement mechanisms to do that anymore. So this is this administration's very real and very pronounced effort to roll back the gains of the civil rights movement and essentially to make America, in their view, great again by returning us to the 1950s before those protections were enshrined into federal law.
Melissa Murray, MSNBC legal analyst, thank you for being with us. Coming up, as the military struggles with historically low recruitment rates, the Trump administration has diminishing